Hi followers, Phil again. So this is tip 24.12, growing carrots in the garden. I'm a great fan of growing carrots. They're obviously a very attractive addition to the garden, and also they're very productive. You can get a large amount of crop out of a very small area. And also any area that you choose in your garden, such as somewhere in your flower garden, because they have this attractive ferny foliage and they're a small plant, you can grow them just about anywhere, as long as you follow the principles that I'll be discussing in this tip. Another reason for growing carrots in your garden is that after you harvest them, the sweetness quite quickly turns into fibre, and so the best time to pick them and cook them, or just simply eat them directly in the garden, is straight after harvest. Also, you can grow them almost any time of the year in the temperate zone. You can sow them any time of the year except for during the winter months, when they would be very prone to attack by slugs or snails, or to suffer in the anaerobic cold conditions. Also, if you sow them in autumn and try to overwinter them, they will sometimes bolt or go up to seed in early spring. Now, I'll be discussing two methods of growing them. First of all, the 3-row method, which is the one that I'm showing here. It's the most efficient method. The second method is the single wider row method, which can be quite suitable if you're growing your carrots in a small area in a flower garden, for example. Firstly, you need to select a sunny position, preferably one that hasn't had a carrot crop for several years, as pests and diseases can linger in the soil. This is part of the general concept of crop rotation, that is, growing vegetables in different plots each season. Raised beds are beneficial. My beds are about 600 millimeters or 2 feet high. The adult of the carrot rust fly, a problem pest in temperate zone countries, is low flying. So the high sides of the beds may deter them. Light sandy soils suit carrots best. The ground shouldn't be highly fertilized or contain partially decomposed organic matter. These would cause the developing carrots to be stumpy or forked. You can see here that I've heaped up some large crop remnants into a heap on my garden. I've moved this into another area of the garden before digging my garden rather than forking it in. As I move around, it gradually gets composted, leaching nutrients into the soil and being drawn into the soil by earthworms and other invertebrate animals. If you do need to add artificial fertilizer or other supplements, do this lightly, as carrots aren't heavy feeders. Excessive nitrogen in particular encourages leafy tops rather than roots. Cultivation should take place when the soil is moist but not saturated. The soil should be forked over deeply and broken up with the fork to create a fine tilth, well cultivated to break down clods. The surface should be raked to create a fine bed for the seeds. Unless you have only a very small garden, carrots are best sown in these rows. This is because they are vulnerable to vigorous weeds at the seedling stage. A strictly defined row will make management easier, as I will show you. I suggest sowing 3 short rows to get the maximum crop from a limited area, but there's no magic to this. It could be 2 rows or 4 rows, for example. A full row, mine are 3.5 meters or 10 feet, is a wasteful use of the valuable crop space, and there is a danger of larger growing crops such as brassicas or courgettes growing over the carrots. Mark the rows, putting a short marker stake at each end. You see here that I use my torpedo hoe as a guide, as I will be hoeing between the rows. The space between the rows is a little wider than the width of the hoe. Then the soil in the row can be lightly raked aside to create a shallow furrow. The seed is fine, so my furrow is only about 1 centimeter or ½ inch deep. This means that the germinating seed is vulnerable to drying out in the early stages. Carrot seed is fine, so should be sown in calm conditions to prevent it from blowing away. I hold the seed packet a bit above the furrow and gently release the seed using the tapping method. I show the method more fully in tip 13.3, seed sowing. Lightly rake soil over the seed and tamp it down gently with the head of the rake. This will bring the seed into close contact with the moist soil. I then put my wire netting hoops over the row, mainly because blackbirds or cats may disturb the newly planted bed. I keep the bed moist, particularly during the period of germination and emergence, as this is the most vulnerable time. Weeds can easily and quickly overwhelm the young carrots. You can see here that I use my torpedo hoe between the rows and then pick out weed seedlings among the carrots by hand. This system may seem a little laborious, however once the carrot plants are well established they tend to suppress most weed growth. The crop will need to be thinned and weeded diligently during the early stages when they are most vulnerable. I've sped up the weeding session, however it took less than 3 minutes to weed this bed. As the plants develop, the thinnings can be eaten. During weeding and thinning, the soil can be pulled over the shoulder of the remaining plants. This will prevent them greening and reduce the risk of attack from carrot rust fly. Next, I'll discuss the single wide row method for growing a single row of carrots. This is particularly useful if you only have a small area in, say, a flower garden or some other area. If you have a limited area to grow your carrots in, you can sow a single relatively wide row up to 15 centimeters or 6 inches wide. This will provide a good sized crop from a very small area. After forking, I create a wide but shallow furrow with my rake. I sow across the width of this furrow and again cover the seed shallowly and tap it down with the head of the rake. I put 4 markers showing the corners of the wide bed. I cover the seed and water as I do with the 3-row method. For my weeding, I use the corner markers as a guide for hoeing around the row of carrots. As you can see, the hand weeding, in this case mainly young speedwell, is a much more time-consuming method than with the 3-row method. However, I quite enjoy it. I do a check over the crop first to remove any evil perennial weeds, in this case oxalis bulbs. As the carrots grow bigger, they largely suppress further weeds. I just have to hoe beside the row, which is quick and efficient. I use the chop and drop method. As you can see, the weeds dry off quickly and provide a useful mulch on the surface. I thin out the larger plants for consumption. As you can see, I have no problems with the carrot rust fly without any further control methods. So that's it for this tip. I hope that you're inspired to try and grow carrots in your garden. I find them a very attractive and worthwhile crop to grow. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so, and also to like this tip. And thank you very much for watching this through to the end.